Organically Blunt Show, the podcast that dives deep into the world of cannabis with real, informative conversations. Whether you're a seasoned smoker or just curious, light up and join the conversation. Let's get organically blunt. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Organically Blunt Show. I am Jay Blaze, your host, and this morning I have the honor and opportunity to talk with Jeremy from Build a Soil. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Definitely. It is a complete honor to have you here. I've been talking with you for a while here. We got the soil prepped. I got it in the tote. It's been cooking for a while here. We came out with a short video on it, and I haven't put the avocado in there yet. I don't personally eat them, and unless it's in Mexican food. So I don't like just bite one like an apple or nothing like that. So I haven't gotten one yet, but I am going to the store this morning, and I will probably end up putting one in there and watching the worms because it's crazy. The worms castings you sent us from Colorado, I can't even say it this morning, Colorado Worm Company, still had worms in the bag when we got it.
Oh man, I believe it. Yeah, it's a great company. Hey, hold on just 1 second. I'm here early with you, and I have employees already knocking on the door because they don't know what I'm doing. I want to make sure they know so I can stay.
No problem. Take your time.
Give me 1 second, bro.
Sure.
Hey, I'm here early to do a live stream, so I can't talk. So whatever builds, and then just put it down.
Okay,
I'm gonna hang with him. I'll be up.
All right, now this is asking you want to jump on 3 It's asking for comments after we're done with this.
Not 3 up, no.
No 3
It's fine.
Okay, we'll do the comments then.
Yeah. Okay. It's all good, bro. Hey, man. Sorry about that. I know it's live, recording. I didn't want to do that, but It's all good. Gotta make sure everybody's lined out.
Right.
And they're making soil, which is what we're talking about. It's important.
Definitely. So, I put the crap blend in, I put the worm castings in, I went through and kind of screened it. I know, a lot of people don't do that, like we talked about, but, I wanted to get a lot of the root mass out of there because I am using it indoors versus a lot of people that have it. They're reamending for outdoor soil. A lot of people do indoor, like yourself, and it's getting to be more popular, especially amongst the community that I'm a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's dig right in. I mean,
let's do it.
I got it baking here. It's gonna be going into the containers. I'm waiting on a few things for the tent. I'm very OCD on this run. Like I want cleanliness. So I went through and I found a great company that made some custom mounts for the fans because I run AC Infinity fans.
Like 3D printed or something, or?
Yep, they're 3D printed, cool. And we're gonna be introducing them here in the upcoming week. Here, I'm supposed to get one tomorrow, so hopefully it comes on time. It comes out of Canada, so I'm waiting on all that fun shipping stuff, And but long story short, we're gonna be using the Rain Science grow bags. 7 gallon, and I'm putting them on the AC Infinity self-watering bases. I just want to try them out this time, something different, something new, something to show the audience, AC Infinity didn't have any part of it, anything here. So I want to let people know that came all out of my own pocket. I'm not endorsed by them. So definitely, and we're going to be putting them in the 5x5. And, like you mentioned, the way we're reamending things, because you were under the anticipation we were doing a larger container. No, we are doing it smaller on a smaller scale, but I feel that it'll be great for getting the information and the knowledge out to the audience to teach them on a small scale that it's still doable and you can still reamend your soil even on the small side of things.
Yep. I mean, so when I first started, I think I saw a post the other day from Miss Green Dreams, who was part of the beginning of the LOS forum that we made together, which is this livingorganicsoil.org. And that was when the forums were kind of disbanding, and a lot of the organic growers that were known in each of the forums we're having too many arguments with the outside group, and we're getting kicked and banned, and people, it's kind of ridiculous. And so then the whole group of us would go to one place and then the other. And so the Living Organic Soil was kind of created as a place for us to hang out. And then I had started to build a soil, so I just didn't have time for it. But in that was 5 gallon like Home Depot buckets with cover crop raging and plants, healthy cannabis plants in the middle of it all. And Afghanistan at the time used a lot of that Oldie Mountain compost, but would also go wild harvest the forest. And then Kook came in and he was sharing his recipe, and there was Microbe Man. And so I tried it all. I had already built super soil from Subcool, and I had basically taken my warehouse. I had like a shop on my property. I was super lucky. I was renting this place. The guy before had a shop kind of disconnected, and that became like my workshop, the beginnings of Build a Soil, where I had a tarp. And dude, I can't tell you, I'd mix some of these recipes. I'd come back in and open the soil, and there'd be like a snake or a lizard, like shit that I'd
Wow.
never seen on my property. It would come find that organic goodness. And some of my first recipes included wild harvesting in the forest. And we don't teach that a lot because I don't want everybody driving out and just taking everything from the forest. But
Right.
for the most part, when it's done responsibly and you start to see that fungal life develop in your soil and mushrooms growing, you're like, I get it. There's a lot going on here. And so with all of that, there's so many thoughts about this living soil process. And the Build a Soil way has become a phrase that we use because there's certain choices we make. And so you mentioned one of them. We recommend a larger container size. And we've noticed that most people, including yourself, they're very against this for whatever reason. They're like, no, I'm going to try. It's fine. This is big enough. What we see is it's 3, 4, 5 times harder in a smaller container based on our style. It doesn't mean it's not doable. As I mentioned, 5 gallon was kind of like the beginning. And they were doing more recycling at the time. And Mountain Organics, Blue Jay Way, he started doing a lot more no-till. A lot of us were just keeping our soil because we'd invested so much into it. And instead of dumping it and screening it and like remixing it or anything, we would just keep it in there. And so because the goal was to keep it as a no-till, we all started going up a lot larger in container size. When you're recycling, certainly you can keep it a little bit smaller. But part of the goal of keeping it forever is to not deplete the soil and to not have to be so good at feeding, like just to not be in control anymore. The plant's in control, the soil's working in harmony with that plant. And now we're kind of shedding that white lab coat and we're putting on the overalls and we're saying, all right, I'm now your herder. I'm your shepherd. I will do whatever you say, but I will not be fully in control. And there's a disconnect there that some people don't like, where it's like, well, what do you mean I'm not control, right? Because pot size is super important. And there's some confusion out there. We have our feeding schedule. We never wanted to have a feeding schedule. That's because most of us go in smaller containers. And so then it makes sense to have, like when we first started, compost tea was like the go-to. Like if you have a problem, compost tea. If you don't have a problem, compost tea. And so we would teach how to make your own brewers. And then we started getting into microscope work and dissolved oxygen levels. And at the end of the day, a lot of this just worked. You didn't have to be perfect. And that buffer of container size makes it easier. But at the end of the day, when you go to a big container, water only becomes very achievable without issues towards the end. But in a 7 gallon, one of the primary things I want the viewers to be aware of is that it's still totally doable. But what we should do is flip to flower potentially earlier than we normally would. And that'll ease the pressure. And the one thing missing, in my opinion, when you're in living soil, the root tip that's pushing through the soil at that sloughing off point where like the new root tip is growing cells and pushing through, that seems to be where the root can pick up nutrients easier. So as they have more soil, the biology is releasing it and the roots can go get whatever they want whenever they want it. But when we start to get into a smaller container, if we veg to a point where it's bigger than the container before we flip the flower, those roots don't have the same amount of ability to stretch into new food as they do for the canopy to be twice as big as the root zone. And so when we're in a big container, it can stretch, the roots can stretch, and all of that nutrition is all assimilated without issue. So just be prepared. If you over veg a little bit, or maybe that setup with the sub irrigation works so well, your plants are growing so fast, just be cognizant of that you want to flip the flower early enough, and it should be totally simple. Definitely. Now, to bring viewers up to speed, because I'm guessing they've already watched your previous episode where you mixed some of this together, right? Because
we've got, we're not huge yet. We're one of the smaller podcasts.
No, it's fine, but
thanks to the support, everybody. We are about to hit 450 subscribers, hopefully today.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
I built everything with these two hands, just like you did with your soil. You know, I'm digging in, and
I respect it.
you know, I've got I think about almost 190 views on that video. So almost half my subscribers have
I've seen
watched.
it, yeah. So
Yeah,
bring me up to
and
speed, because we sent some stuff out, and like you mentioned, I was under the impression we're going to do these big containers, and I really wanted you to see the experience. But at the end of the day, I'm like, look it, I just want more people to experience the joy of making their own soil. And so you told me, hey, you
definitely.
had some soil. Instead of discarding it, you wanted to keep it. And so remind
Yep.
me what soil you started with that you're now recycling.
Well, we had a year agreement last season with Coastal Maine Soil. And
Awesome.
we met up with one of the reps, I did personally, right here in town. He was from my area. And he's like, he pulled out his personal credit card and he went and bought me 5 bags to get me started, you know. So I used their Stonington blend, and I put it to use, and then they sent me a little bit more throughout the year, you know, on a pallet to my driveway here. And somehow something happened and the rep moved away. So our deal lost, and I couldn't find soil anywhere. This is why I came up with this idea, because I always use we reuse our soil outside, and that's what I know. I'm an outdoor grower coming indoor. And I said to myself, I said, man, I keep throwing these bags away, so that's waste. I said, I keep throwing the soil away, but yet I live in a housing community and it's legal, and I have my medical here too. But I was so, you know, kind of hidden, like I didn't want people to know. And
yeah, you
I'm
don't
like,
want to get ripped or whatever. Just because it's legal doesn't mean there's not greed if you've got some fire.
Exactly. And you know, I live in a gated housing community, essentially, is what people would call it. And cheers to everybody out there. And definitely, you know, I was like, man, okay, I'm going to go up to my local grocery shop. I'm going to get my soil where I normally do. And I was always, after they kind of cut ties, I was like, well, where am I going to get my soil? I'll go back to where I was getting it before I had the deal. This shop, you know, I support local. And I go to my local town here, which is an agricultural town. And it's very small, a lot of Amish based. And I'm like, okay, cool, you know. I pull in the parking lot, and then I forgot they're stoners. They operate on stoner hours, is what I call it. They don't open till 11 o'clock, and it's 9:30 in the morning. And I'm like, what am I going to do for the next hour and a half? So I drive around, I come back, still not open. So I wait a few days, I come back. They closed up shop. And I couldn't find soil anywhere. So I go to the next one, which is out by our mall in the next city. And I'm like, hey, you know, you guys got any Fox Farm? Because that's the only brand I personally know and I'm familiar with, because it's what I used all them years before Coastal Maine. And I'm like, well, okay. And they're like, no, we don't have any of that. We have some Pro Mix, Bayos stuff you got to mix up. And I'm like, I don't know any of that stuff. I'm like, I just need something I can put in a pot and I can go. And and you know, then, you know, I started coming across you guys, and I built a soil, and I'm been following you guys for about 2 years now. And I was like, well, I like what they do, but I can't find any of this stuff. And I know shipping's going to be an arm and a leg. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm like, places are closing up locally. I need to hold on to what I have and figure out how to reuse it. And that's when I came across you guys, and I reached out to you, and here we are.
I love it. That's really good for me to hear, because
yeah, definitely.
You know, I think you can reuse any of the soil, and hearing that you started with Coastal Maine is great. When we were starting on the forums, there was only a few companies that were recommended. And what I mean by that is not for the soil, but for the compost. We were all online, and we realized quickly that if you're talking hydroponics or soilless, you could essentially be East Coast and West Coast, get on the phone or on a Zoom or something, and say, okay, what's your water? Are you RO? What's your pH? What container size? What's your environment like? What nutrients are you using? Okay, now we're apples to apples. Let's talk growing. But when you talk organic, you're like, yo, go grab some local compost, mix it up at 1/3 or something. And then you're like, well, my results aren't like yours. You're like, well, where'd you get the compost? I don't know, some guy on Craigslist. You're like, well, I hope it's good. You know, and so that was the one factor that if you told someone, they may not get the same results. And
Right.
after I started Build a Soil, I realized all the compost around here, I worked with the guy locally to make our living soil in the beginning, and he had beautiful compost piles, but they were terrible as far as what we needed, what we were looking for. It's good for local, but most of the local stuff is similar to what's already out here. Alkaline soil. A lot of times it's just ground up wood chips that are mixed in with manure or other things, and a lot of that comes from the same scraped off the same alkaline soil, and so it had a lot of bicarbonate. It didn't have the balance that we were looking for. And when I started using premium compost, whether I had to import it or not, the soil just started to work, and you'd get the results that you're talking about for living soil. So Coast of Maine was high on the list. If you're on the East Coast, they're like, yo, reach out for their lobster compost. It's good stuff.
Yep.
And Coot at that time was also saying, look, when you're building your soil, add some crustacean meal, which is because it comes with calcium, and they're made of chitin, which is fungal food. And it made sense. And I'm like, well, they've already got lobster compost, but I've never, it's East Coast. And so we never really worked with it with Build a Soil. But from what I understand, you're starting with a great soil. We did a YouTube series called Soil Wars, where they tried all the different soils for outdoor hemp. And Build a Soil, I think, took first and second. I was really impressed. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was kind of anxious about it. But I remember Coast of Maine did really well, too. And so you're starting with a great base to recycle. And then to that, we sent you those, the premium, the Colorado Worm Company castings, which are some of our most nutrient dense, had some worms in there, from what I hear from you. So that's killer. What else? So how many gallons did you have? You mixed it in a tub, right?
We did roughly I got the tote right here, but I did altogether I put in 7 5-gallon pots.
Okay.
Minus the root balls. I broke everything down on a tarp.
Yep.
Out on my deck on a nice day. We finally had a weather break, just like we do today. And we're 30 degrees warmer than we are yesterday. Michigan is so crazy with weather. Yesterday it was snowing, and it was the first day of spring in the morning. It was snowing, and in the afternoon we hit 40s. Today we're hitting 50s. Tomorrow we'll probably be in the 30s again. So it's just crazy. But I got out there and I laid the tarp out. I put the tote on there, and I'm like, well, okay. And I didn't have a tripod. I got a tripod now, so the videos will be getting better, guys. I won't be holding the phone as much, and doing things one-handed or pausing to try to show steps or whatever. So it'll get better, I promise you. And you got to work with me there. But so I put together a small video, and I'm trying to get these root balls out of my grow bags. But my root systems were so great, they literally formed a crust on both sides where they sandwiched the bag basically in the middle of roots. And my buddy's like, well, how are you going to get them out of there? I said, I don't know, but I can't get them out. I said, but I'm shaking them. So I kept pausing the camera, and he's like, why don't you just use a wire brush, like a parts cleaning brush? And that's just a little grow hack. You don't got to scrub hard. I just did it over after they were dried out a little bit, and they came right out. And then I shook them in there, and I got all the roots out, and then I put in the worm castings, the whole bag, just like you said. And I dug in there and got in there, and then I seen the worms, and I got excited. Worms make me excited. Worms and ladybugs, not so much praying mantis. They kind of scare me. But hey, each to their own. And I seen them, and I had to get that on the camera. And so then I put that in there, and then I went according to your measurement of basically. I'd have to go back and double check. Okay. But I went off your measurements, and I put in roughly, I think it was close to like 6.5 cups of the crafted Build a Soil Craft Blend 3.0. And I mixed it all in there, and it's been sitting in here, and I checked it this morning, and there's still some worms in it. I'm going to add a few more, but like I said, we're going to be getting ready to put that hopefully in the pot soon. And that's where we're at right now, and then comes germination. I'm doing some things a little bit different this time. I'm going to be trying some things that are new to me, because I've always been the paper towel guy. Paper towel, put it in the Ziploc baggie, and as weird as it sounds, you build a little humidity off your breath, you blow a little bit in the bag, and then plate it. You put it on top of the refrigerator with a bucket over it, or in a dark drawer or something like that, even though refrigerators don't really build heat like they used to. and you put it somewhere and you germinate it. Well, now I know it's not necessary, and I found out a few things. I'm just trial and erroring it, trying to show different things. I bought a humidity dome kit with the propagation tray, and I reached out to a company, which I will be debuting them soon, who makes organic plugs, all organic. And I want to try popping the seeds into the plugs versus the napkin. I'm going to do both and see which one sprouts faster. I just got a curiosity for myself. And and then we're going to go from there. I'm basically going to take them plugs, or what some people would basically look at as like a clone, but it's from seed. And I would take that and I'm going to put that right into our 7-gallon Rain Science grow bags direct. I'm not going to transplant. I'm going right in like I do with my autos. I'm going right into the final container. And I have these, I'm not going a big scrog net, but I found these metal like grate things at Menards for like tomatoes, but they call them grow through grates, and they're like a scrog net, but they're not metal. I don't know how to explain it, but they're green and they come with 3 stakes, and I'm going to use them to help support them and scrog them out, because I haven't really done a lot of scrogging. I've always been an LST clip, kind of widen your base type guy, versus actually, tying it to the bag or anything. I've kind of jumped on that 3D printing products that are available for the grow industry, and I'm just playing with different things and I'm enjoying it. And that got put into there. But yeah, we're going to basically scrog them out, and then eventually, I think right before flower, I do have a 5x5 scrog net. Hopefully I don't break my back too much crawling around, because I can only get to my tent from 2 sides. And I'm going to put that in there and hopefully try to fill it out a little bit. So that's where we're at there. And I do have a Milwaukee Instruments, brand new in the box. I've had it for about a year. I'm guilty. I don't really test pH a whole lot when it comes to soil, if at all. I'm guilty. I'm kind of a lazy grower there. But I have a Blue Lab for EC and pH. And then I also have my Milwaukee 3-in-1 probe kit for the soil pH. Would like to at least get a standard reading, maybe not every watering, but a standard reading of what I would like to do just for fun is I would like to pH each soil direct in the pot before I do anything with it, just to show where everything is sitting. Okay. And then I talked to Jeffrey Lowenfels, and he told me about this kit that I can get for testing the soil and different things. And he said it's almost instantaneously. You can do it right in your home, and it's got a smart app. I don't remember the name off the top, but I'll have to go back and look in our emails. And I'm going to probably reach out and try to get one of those, because I feel that learning this stuff myself firsthand and then re-educating it is going to be the way to go for me, because that's how I am learning firsthand and re-educating at the same time. So we're all learning together. So it's going to be a learning process for me. I'm not very scientific, so I don't know all the lingo or the words, but or measurements or what we got to do. I'm very small town, but I definitely want to show what results I can with what equipment I have available to me.
I think it's important. I think when people are starting, they see all this knowledge that they feel like they might have to have, and it's not true. If we get good soil and you plant the plant, you're going to get good results. I can't say the same for hydro. If you start hydro and you mess up a big feed, or there's a watering issue or something, it can be catastrophic. But in soil, if you're new and you have a container size that works and you don't just ignore it for a week, you're going to succeed. That's what's so great about this. You're going to have a harvest. Definitely. And of course, you're experienced, so I'm positive you're going to do well. But at the end of the day, one of the things that we teach, like we read a book called The Intelligent Gardener by Steve Solomon, and he goes really into soil testing and discusses a lot of it. But from that, I think it just helps you understand that there is some sort of math or some sort of balance to these nutrients that are in there. But through that, just like compost tea, a lot of us went really deep on it, trying to control every little milligram of nutrient. Yep. And at the end, you come out thinking, these soil tests are great, especially if you notice that there's a problem. that you can eliminate. But
Yep.
trying to perfect it off of the soil test beyond just getting in balance, I think is a lot more challenging and is a little bit of a fool's errand. And each time you make an adjustment, it's like a Rubik's Cube, it starts to change. And so it's more, I think, better to get it in a larger, a good sized container in a balance that's healthy. And the soil will take care of the rest with the plant. And so in that book, the Steve Solomon one, he teaches what he calls the complete organic fertilizer. And he basically says, look, if you want to mix a few amendments together to make sure your garden's going to do well, this is how you make it complete. And you're likely to have really good results. And that's as simple as it needs to get. We don't have to have, a 1 cup with a 10-pound plant with perfect leaves. It's like, we just need to have that fire. And it doesn't always need to be perfect to get there. And when we mix the soil, we have a report at buildasoil.com. You can go to the blog at the top, and there's a report. You type your email in and it sends it to you. It says how to make your own complete organic fertilizer. This way you don't have to buy anything from us. You can go to your local shop and figure it out. You may already have the amendments, but it teaches you kind of like a human, where you say, well, to have a complete meal, I probably need a protein and a salad. And, people at least know how to eat. We know when we're not eating healthy. We know when we're eating healthy. But for a plant, you're like, well, how do I know it's eating healthy? And so that free report gives you the complete organic fertilizer breakdown. And it's pretty simple. We really want a seed meal of some sort, because we're not using a lot of blood meals and a lot of these slaughterhouse wastes that are approved for organic use, but they don't come from organic farms. And so we use seed meal. And that is if you're eating vegetarian or vegan, the seeds and the nuts and all that, that's a lot of nutrition. So at least people know there's a lot of nutrition in the seed. That's why we feed it to animals. So we feed the soil the seed meal. Most of the soil we're talking about has a seed bank in there from all the weeds that build up the fertility that eventually build up into a higher forest. So we use seed meal. Then we need a really good calcium source, a phosphorus source, and some trace minerals. So in that report, it tells you how to mix a few amendments you might have together, and know that when you mix it in the soil and you're not doing it excessively, you're going to have really good results. And so what you did in your tub was you took recycled soil that was likely depleted because you'd already grown in it.
Yep.
And then at that point, we added fresh worm castings in, which are full of nutrients. We added the craft blend, which is our version of the complete organic fertilizer, but it's got 15 ingredients. So it's very diverse, has lots of rock dust for trace minerals and kelp. And then it has phosphorus sources, it has the seed meals, and it has a variety of calcium sources. So essentially, we're just following the protocol. You mix it in the soil just like you did. I'm positive you're going to have really good results. And definitely, when people go to Build a Soil and they order a bag of soil, like you may have done, had that hydro store, that grow shop been open, you bypass this part where you really get to experience making the soil and then see how healthy the plant is. And I think it permanently changes your mind to go, okay, I literally just mixed some castings and some stuff in there. I didn't do math on a calculator, and it worked very well. And so now the math on the calculator comes into play. If you're commercial and you have high sodium or high bicarbonate, or one of the nutrients is way out of whack, the soil test will show you. But when you're at home, you can just read your plants. And a lot of times, if I've overdone it, I'll just throw some cover crop in there, and the cover crop will now fix the soil. It drinks the excess water. So if you're overwatered, cover crop helps. It balances the nutrients, and then you can just chop it, drop it, and the worms will eat it. It's so simple. And a lot of us overcomplicate it because it's something we're so passionate about. Even you're I want to screen the soil and all these things because we care. We want to make sure that the next few months of our efforts are going to provide rewards for it. And so
definitely
everything you're doing makes sense to me. That 7 gallons with the rain science, the only thing that I consider with those, I don't like those bags for our style. I think they're a great bag. They breathe a lot. And in living soil, we don't want that dry down as much from the outside. So you'll notice the grassroots living soil pots, they're actually closed off around the sides and only open at the bottom for the air. So just keep that in mind when you're in. I think you're going to beat that though, because you're in the self-wicking container. I think that's going to help, but just make sure that you're cognizant in that 7 gallon. Is it really drying out on those sides, or is it keeping its moisture?
Right.
And that's something that will be of help.
Sorry. I've seen a couple people, and I've came across a couple of them other bags, like the grassroot bags or whatever you call them. I'm not familiar with the brand, and I don't notice that they do have that metal liner. It's almost like a saran wrap in there, and I've actually seen people use saran wrap on the outside to
That's
help
why it
people.
came. Yeah, people were saran
Yep.
wrapping the outside. Like in Colorado,
Yep.
it's dry out here. So some people were like, ooh, it's drying out. It's dry out. It's a smaller container. So they would wrap it in plastic. And so there was
Definitely.
a guy, consultant in the community that eventually worked with grassroots to line those. And then now it's became one of their flagship products. It's the living soil container because
Definitely.
living soil guys were hard to please. And so
Yep.
anything that makes us happy became like a good product. And that is a food grade, BPA free plastic that they line it with.
Okay.
But really, we're just trying to keep the moisture in there so that the
Yep.
biology is active.
Yeah, I do have a question in the audience here that I wanted to address. Captain Black asked if male root balls affect my chop and drop. I personally don't know, but thinking logically, I wouldn't think the sex would in the root ball would have anything to do with any of that, honestly.
Nope, it's not going to affect anything. So when we're talking about just decomposing organic matter, at the end of the day, we're talking cellulose, chitin, just the most basic building blocks. And when we're adding specialty amendments, we're looking for some of their secondary properties, like the medicinal compounds that these plants make, and taking advantage of some of them. So there's neem cake and karanja cake, and there's mustard seed meal, and there's all these special ones that have unique secondary compounds they make. But the primary is just they're going to be organic matter. And so your root ball in a larger container, as it's just left in there, decomposes into more organic matter. The worms break it down. The other thing is when you're no-tilling and you're not reamending, that root ball leaves some structure. And when you're in a 5-gallon, the root ball is like the whole thing. When you're in a big container, the root ball never becomes a ball.
Right.
Roots shoot out everywhere, and it doesn't become so like iron locked in there. And so, it's easy to just plant next to it or twist the stalk, pull it out, plant right back in the same spot.
Definitely. Captain's got a lot of good questions here he's asking this morning. He said, I'm guessing back dry. Back hurt, living
Dry
soil, if you reamend, dry back with fish shit for microbes help.
Okay, so dry back is one of those things that I don't encourage a full dry back, but I do like to have this ebb and flow. I feel like it's natural. I don't try and keep it just perfectly locked in. Some of the automatic watering will keep it pretty dialed in, and drip and all these other processes have proven that keeping it in an optimal moisture range will increase yields and plant health. So the living soil way is to target a more even moisture level than to have a big dry back. But the next thing is he mentioned using some sort of fish product. I think the waste of the fish. I avoid that typically. And the main reason why is I don't believe in farmed fish. I don't like eating them. I think they're bad. I don't like the farmed salmon. They typically feed GMO corn. The farmed fish indoors in like these aquaponic grows and things like that they use a lot of the waste from, they feed them dog food a lot of the times because it's cheap.
Wow.
And I'm just like, man, I don't really want that type of fish product. I'd rather use the ground up fish as liquid fish or worm castings. But at the end of the day, if we had a good source of fish waste and we're using it, the biology is going to be abundant. And a dry back's not going to completely kill it. It'll ramp back up to life. But what we don't want to do is like kill the biology, bring it back, kill the biology, bring it back. It just, we're kind of chasing our tail. And that's where a bigger container eliminates those swings, makes it easier to keep it in a target range. But when you're using the methodology that comes from hydro, like dry back periods, it's fine because you can flush and you can feed. In living soil, if we dry back too much, we're hurting the biology, but we're also raising the soluble nutrient level in there because there's less water and the same amount of nutrients, and you can get a little tip burn. So I prefer, like we have these EcoWit moisture meters, and it's not going to make a ton of sense, but I'm targeting around 35% moisture on this little meter. And when I first water, it might go up to 40%. And when I wait as long as possible, it might go down to like 25%, but I never go lower or higher, just stays right in this range. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being there's just sopping wet and 1 being totally dry, it seems like most of us are trying to stay in that like 4 to 7 range as opposed to getting too much dry back. You'll hear a concept called crop steering, and guys that are even using like blue mats or other automatic watering they're actually adjusting them to get little phases of dry back. Or
Okay.
at the very end of flower, pulling it back a little bit so it's not fully saturated. So I would say don't worry about it if it happens, but I wouldn't focus on the build-a-soil way. We don't focus on drybacks. So
Right, right, definitely. And I've talked to my buddy Northern Scrogger. He's using the Blue Mat system in his new setup, and he introduced me to it. And we're going to be going that route eventually. Like me and you talked. After this run, I am jumping into a bigger container, guys. I'm going to be going into a 3x10 grassroots living soil bed
sick.
in the 5x5, and
Well,
I am so excited.
Yeah, so you're going to see the 7-gallon, and you're going to get great results. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But you're going to quadruple your results with half the effort when you go to that big container. It's going to blow your mind. Now, it's scary because a lot of people are like, man, that's a lot of soil, and what if something happens? And you mentioned I can only access the tent from 2 sides, and that's pretty normal. Sometimes only 1 side. And so one of the things that a build-a-soil, a living soil type grower needs to kind of shed is this desire when you're newer to have this perfect little 3-gallon or 5-gallon and be able to take it right out, set it on the kitchen counter and spin it around and take a leaf off and look at it, take pictures with it, and then go put it back. And while that's fun, it comes at a cost. And that cost is this big battery of soil that would produce phenomenal flavor and yield. And so I would rather crawl around once or twice a grow and get in there, and it's a pain in the ass. But I've just deleted the thought that I need to move the plant, and my new world is the plants stay there. And whether it's a 30-gallon or a 4x4 bed and it's scrog screened out, with a scrog, you can't move anything. But when you do have a scrog, you can clean up the lowers, and now you don't have to worry about it most of the rest of the grow. So there's no reason once you get that done to really get in there, and you'll be fine. So I notice all these little things, right? Because I, like a teacher, you have the students come into class each year, and all of the new people, and they're just wide-eyed, just like I was. I still am, where you're like, I'm going to see weed grow. I'm going to taste it. I'm going to smoke it. I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to have full jars. I'm going to live in abundance. And then we all make similar decisions. And that's one of them, being able to move the plant. It's like this last thing that people can't let go of. And I feel like that's why sometimes they're like, whoa, why would I go to a bigger container? How am I going to move it around? Right.
It's kind of like, I hate to put it into perspective, but this is my perspective here. It's kind of like your how do I say it without being stereotypical? Okay. I guess it's like, I know. Okay. You guys remember the movie Legally Blonde?
Yeah.
You know how she carried the little dog around in her purse? That's how people treat their plants. They're like, oh, look here, I got this.
Yeah, it's like the best thing in the world. Yeah, no, I get it.
I mean, exactly.
Every one of us, I think, can connect to the passion that these plants produce. Anyone that's ever grown it, I don't care if it's just a backyard plant that you really never intended on doing again, or if this is something you do 24/7, 365. There's this captivation to the frost starting to develop and the odors starting to come in.
Oh yeah.
These plants are so unique that it's almost impossible not to get kind of sucked into that whole world. And when you get into that bigger container, you're just going to notice that it's easier. And so I can't wait to see you go through this one and then keep following along as you go into a bigger bed. And that's really the story. That's the evolution of the living soil grower. From all of us go through this process. So.
Yes. It's like you're a baby fish and you just got to swim your way there, because and as you go, you learn different processes, you adapt them, you figure out what works for your environment. Everybody's is different. Mine here, today, let me look here. It's roughly 38% humidity inside today. Outside of the tents and everything. That's just like in the zone. Yesterday it was 23 in here. We get that fluctuation because of our weather. It's so crazy here. And definitely, like you said, Captain, it is great for stress. It is the best stress reliever when I come home and I can open my tent and I see my babies. It's just like the pet, you're like, oh, yay, but a lot of times you got to remember, and I'm learning this, especially when it comes to tents, you don't always want to go in there every day because you disturb the environment once it's dialed in. And then it's got to work back to get it dialed back down to the numbers you wanted at so it can sit where it needs to be. So
Yep.
you kind of come every couple of days, you know.
When you start automating and you have a graph showing your environment on your
Yep.
phone, you can look at it. You go, wow, what happened? Oh, that's when I was opening the tent. You're like,
Yep.
maybe I shouldn't be in there every day tinkering with every little thing all the time. Just kind of keep it
Exactly.
to this point where you're interacting a little bit less. And the bigger container and the living soil style totally allows that. And then you can keep the environment, which is so important. The grow light, the humidity, the temperatures, those are all the weakest links that are to be focused on, along with good genetics. And the rest just is easy. Like if the genetics are right and the environment's right, the soil doesn't have to be perfect and you'll get really good results. And if the soil is really dialed in, it just becomes one of those, favorite runs where it's like in winter when everything's so easy to keep temperature and it's just like, man, that was a good run. I love it. And a lot of that's related to the environment being easy to manage on one of those runs. Or sometimes in the dead of summer, even with grow lights operating at night, you have these big humidity swings and temperature swings. It makes drying harder. It makes all of it harder. And so living soil can help, but there's still all these skills. And I almost compare it to like cooking, or like Clackamas Coot. He taught me to make bread because he wanted me to understand that the biology in there, the simple single cell fungus, the yeast that's producing that at a 10-degree different temperature creates a different response in the growth of the starter. And it creates a different texture in the bread. And what's so neat is he turned me on to what's called no need bread, where you don't need it. You don't do anything. You just trust the biology and you give it more time. And it does all of it on its own. And then you have artisanal ones that it's kind of like the water only would be no need bread. You just mix the ingredients, you don't touch it, and then you bake it. But the artisanal guys are like, no, you must fold it 10 times this way, 10 times this way, wait 10 minutes, fold it, beat it, fold it, 4 hours later, take it. And what's so cool is the average person would taste both breads and say they're both phenomenal, way better than I buy in the store. Teach me any one of these methods and I will be so happy with the flavor I'm getting. But when you've been doing it a while, I mean, there's this romance to like, okay, I want to try and fold it 5 times, do everything the guy says and see, is it really that much different? And there's nuances, like the inside might be whiter holes, better crumb. The crust might be slightly better, but to the average person eating, regular loaves of bread at the store, they're all going to be good. And so when you go to living soil, there's guys that are doing all this crazy stuff and special teas and all these additives. And there's other guys that are like, fuck that, the no need, the no-till, just the water only, don't fuck with it. Plenty good for me. And it produces 99.9% as good of results. And so there's just a lot of considerations here. But I think on this round, don't overthink it. And then reach out to me if you've overgrown the 7. And we'll talk about keeping up with it. Otherwise, if you take time, it's going to be just a walk in the park.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're putting your guys' recipe essentially with the main soil up against the Pro Mix, up against the Shell Hume, and we're just going to see what they can do, and plain and simple. And Shell Hume says that they're water only from seed to harvest. I've heard different results from different people, but we're going to put it to the test.
There's nothing in the world that's guaranteed water only.
I know this.
And so I just don't say that about our soil, because if you grow a 10-foot plant in an 8-ounce cup, it's no longer water only. And so I think the goal could be to offer a water only type mix. But if you're an athlete, someone could say, hey, you only need to eat this 1 protein shake a day, and that's your food. I go run a marathon a day. Do I need more? Yes. So there's no one size fits all. However, any of these soils could be water only if you give it a 100-gallon container and you flip the flower easy, right? So it's just, I just think it's important that when people hear water only, a lot of times it's timing, environment, and container size. Because if you flip the flower after vegging for 3 months in a 2-gallon, you're going to have to feed. There's just no way around it. And so that's why we have a feeding schedule, is for when people kind of overshoot the mark. Otherwise, I prefer basically water only. Certainly I run a business, and at home, I've got to grow right now. The last 10 years, 24/7, 365, I've had to grow. It's my favorite thing to do. When I come to work, I check on the grow here for YouTube. When I get home, I check on my personal grow because I want to see how they're doing. And at home, because I'm so busy and because I've already got the grow that I'm really tending to here for YouTube, I have to make it easy. So at home, I've got a 4x8 bed. I throw a few plants in it at a time in one side, or I'll keep it perpetual. And I literally do nothing. I add water, I'll reamend, every time I open the tent, the plants are praying. And so it's just,
That's
I think
awesome.
it's really what got us motivated is seeing that without all the work. So
Definitely. So typically what I do with all the guests, I ask 3 to 5 questions that I normally ask. And I would like to do that with you if you got a couple minutes. We're hitting the 45 minute mark. I don't want to keep you longer than an hour here. So we'll start wrapping things up.
Yeah, let's do it.
You're busy. So here we go. All right. Just for everybody out there, and some people are curious. The number one question I always ask is, how did you come across cannabis and where did you find it and how old were you when you first tried it?
Okay, it's a good question. So I'm pretty transparent with all this. I didn't really smoke in high school. I wasn't really a partier. A lot of my friends did. No judgment. I hung out with all of them. I just felt like maybe I wasn't ready. I was younger. I graduated when I was 17. My birthday's in September. So it was kind of like keep them a year, get them out of the house kind of thing. And I was out of the house. And when I got into college, actually a little before, end of high school, I'd like smoked at a party. But by the time I got to college, living with my roommate, he was pretty regular stoner. And I was like, well, I'll smoke sometimes on the weekends. And that lasted like a week. And then it's been over 20 years. I don't think I missed a day. It's just been part of my life. And I used to think that, oh, this is going to be a terrible thing. Those people that smoke all the time. And then I realized as I started smoking more, I was like, oh, I get it. Kind of wears off. You're not all spacey. It's like having a cup of coffee, but the opposite. So I like to drink coffee. I like to smoke a little weed, and I like to grow. And
Definitely.
when I was smoking a lot, and I lived in California at the time before I moved to Colorado, the dispensaries were expensive, or your guy would be expensive. I mean, shit, it was a lot for a top shelf ounce, and I would want it, and I would go through it. So homies would always split it. We'd share with each other, do whatever we could, but it added up. And so for me to grow, it was definitely like, I want to have more quality. I never want to be to the bottom of the jar, and I just want to feel abundant, but I don't want to pay $500 a week, something I just can't afford to keep that habit. So growing was just a natural evolution of that. And then when I moved to Colorado, lots changed in my life. I broke up an engagement, changed pretty much everything in my life. And so the garden became like my oasis, so to speak, from life.
Definitely.
And I think a lot of us can relate to that. And since I have that in my background, because I was going through, a harder time in life, and I could check on the plants. And they say to plant a seed is to believe in tomorrow, right? So you buy expensive seeds. They come in from overseas. You're already anticipating that. And then you're setting up the light, and then you're watching the seeds grow. And so literally the first 6 months of a grower's life, every fucking day is like a newborn baby experiencing new stuff. And I think that's what life is about. And
definitely,
when you're doing it for 20 years and you're doing the same way, no-till, I found that the no-till is the only one that doesn't get boring to me. I'm watching cover crop, looking for worms. I feel like I can neglect it a little if I need to, because I have a big container. I can go snowboarding, or I can take a vacation and have somebody water it. Where when you do 24/7, 365, and you got some crazy sophisticated hydro setup, good luck telling your buddy to pH it all, measure out the nutrients, flush it for even a week while you're gone. And so then you have to shut down. And I'm like, man, I don't want to shut down. I just want 24/7, 365 growing. And so this living soil style, this build a soil way, became what fits my adult lifestyle to really create that relationship that I'm looking for. And it also gives me the relief where maybe I might feel like I have to shut down for a grow. In living soil, I'm like, fuck, I'll just plant one plant this time instead of a dozen or something. And just, I can never not grow. Like, it's very hard for me. The last time I was shut down completely, I still had to grow here, but my wife went into hip surgery. We had to leave town for more than a month. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my mom's, I'm going to put them outside and just let them ride. And I came back, had a great harvest, but that was the only time maybe in the last 10 years I've not had an indoor grow going at home. So
definitely. Okay. So that asks my second question. You've met a lot of people, you've been a lot of places. I'm just getting new into the industry and meeting people, but if you could smoke with anybody dead or alive, who would it be and why? And I want the first organic thought that comes to your mind.
And so this is strange. The first random thought was my dad. He's passed, never smoked with him. Don't know if he smoked, but that'd be really fun.
That would be cool. Yeah. I did get to smoke with my grandfather before he passed. It was quite insane, and that was a memory for me. We're riding down the road. He had cancer. He had a lot of things going on, and riding down the road, and my buddy's in the back seat, and we're going to do a large, what I call legacy market deposit. and it was a 5-hour drive north, and so near Canada. We'll just put it that way. And my grandpa always loved to ride along, just to see the stuff. It got him out of the house, and he wasn't feeling good that day. And he hits me on the shoulder as I'm driving. I'm just driving, minding my business, hitting it a couple times, and he says, and I looked at him. I said, "Are you fucking serious right now?" And he says, "Let me hit that," and that was the end of it. He was back to smoking again to relieve his pain, and I thought it was wonderful, because it was a bonding experiment for me, definitely. And that I can relate, and
for sure.
Would that being said,
together, I mean, you might have all these thoughts in your head about how you can't really slow down to have a conversation, or how you're too busy in your life, especially as we have families and other things going on as we get older.
Yep.
And then you take a rip and you start digging into conversation, and you kind of forget about the rest of the world, and you're able to enjoy that personal connection.
Exactly.
Smoking with others it's huge.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to end right there, on that note. What do you have going on? Anything you want to let the audience know where to find you? I'm sure they already do, because it's not hard to find you, but definitely what can we expect from you coming in the next couple of months? I see you doing some things with veggies.
Yep. So we've got our tropical 10x10, where we're doing house plants and tropical plants and veggies. We've got our vegetable farm, which we're going to be running a little bit lower pace this year, but still focusing on like tomatoes and some of the really fun ones. Then we're kicking off season 5 of our YouTube series for our 10x10 grow, and we're going to add a 4x4 grow tent, because for like 8 years I was growing in a 4x4 tent for Instagram.
Okay.
Build this all away. And then I got this idea that, man, I could teach a lot more in a bigger tent, because I could show each quadrant has a different way to do the build a soil style, and teach in one grow what it would take me 4 grows to teach. And now people are saying, well, that's just some big luxurious tent. You don't have to grow in this little tent like I do. And I'm like, what? That's all I did forever. I just did this to show more.
Right. So
we're going to do 3 of the quadrants in the 10x10, 3 different ways. One of the quadrants we're going to grow in smaller containers. We're going to grow an Autopot XXL. It's not small, it's pretty big. An earth box, and a similar size grassroots with a blue mat. So 3 different automated watering ones. Ooh, yeah, the carnivorous plants I really want to try. I see somebody pop that up here. Many people have mentioned that. I really want to try it. I've never grown any.
Wow.
And then we're that open quadrant, because we're only doing 3 out of 4 in the 10x10 area, the 4 quadrants. We pulled it out, and we're going to put that into a 4x4 tent using, I think, a 5th cycle 3x3 bed from our take and bake kit, where we made soil like you did with your hands. And it's on its 5th cycle. It did great on its 4th cycle. We're going to move that into the 4x4 and give that huge bed a run with some autoflowers, which we're not really autoflower guys, but the genetics have come so far these days. And so many of our customers, they just want to have an autoflower and pop off some flavors and then close it up and then do it again later. So we're going to do a 3x3 bed and really show it. And so look out for that YouTube channel. If you guys are into that, we, as a company, not a lot of businesses that offer products, not a lot of them grow. And it's fascinating. They'll offer all these different products, and they don't grow any cannabis for themselves, or they don't even smoke. And so then they're looking for reps or people like you to kind of share how their products work.
Yep.
So I still want everybody to do that, but also I want to lead the pack. I want to be at the front, spearheading this, saying we are growers, for growers, by growers, every day doing this. And now I can't get everybody to have the same success we have. I think everybody should have the same opportunity we have. And sharing this message means that everyone can do it. So
yes, and that's the same thing. I'm kind of like you guys. I support 2 dispensaries in town, and we are getting ready to approach our 20th. I call it the medical mile, because we actually have a medical mile that's all hospitals an hour from here. There's nothing but hospitals. But now in my town, the medical mile is now known as dispensary run. That's the only way I can explain it. And out of them 2, there's only 2 micro grows. And they are people just as myself, people I know from my community that somehow got the investment to get the licensing and created the business. and they're growers and they're doing it firsthand, just like we are, digging in the soil every day. And that's the only two I support out of all 20. It's sad, but at the same time, I explained to them, and they said, well, our demographic is mostly the older people. I'd love to see the senior citizens get into it, like my grandfather, because that's who taught me. So for them to get back into it, they already have the green thumb, and I continue to spread that. Don't judge by age, because people of all different demographics are growing this plant.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important too, because they may not have the same access to the network that we do based on
where
they're at in life and their desire to be on social media or whatever. So they're just going to trust the local grow shop.
Definitely. Yep.
And like you said, when I was in California going to the dispensary, you'd go to like a second level of like some strip mall commercial place, and there'd be like 8 dispensaries in a row in each building.
Yep.
And they just have like signs on the window for what was fresh that day, or you'd have your own personal like one you went to. The one I went to had a lot of really good outdoor flowers from NorCal, and it seems like they were just had the fire. And so I would go to this one in particular. But it still adds up, and I still think that growing your own is the best. We have a customer out of New Mexico, Carver Family Farm. They've got a micro license, and they have a flooded market. A year and a half ago, there was no herb, and you could sell anything. And then they released all the licenses, and now this year, the whole market's flooded. Nobody can sell a thing, at least at a good price. Well, they're still doing great because they've got a micro license. They're using living soil. They're growers, by growers, for growers, and they harvest, and they trim, and they sell it in their own facility, all vertically integrated, so that they have the flowers growing. They've got the dispensary right there. They package it. You come in. It's literally like working with a grower. And I think that's why they're sold out still, is because they've got quality, and because they care, and they've got good genetics, and they build relationships. And so I still think there's going to be an artisanal, part of this, even with the dispensaries. And if those exist, it would be great. I would love to try a different flavor from a grower that I trust. But where I live, there's no more licenses. There's only 2 dispensaries because they put a cap on the law. And now they can literally sell any of the dirtiest shit. There's no competition. So
Same here.
It's
ridiculous, and I don't want to hold you too long, but now you got me. I'm in the conversation just a little bit. Our local one here, I won't say any names, but we all know who they are. They've got big signs out front. They just put them out last week. They don't ever have a car in the parking lot now. None of these places. And it's sad. And it really is but it's good at the same time, because us as legacy growers, we're putting a hurting on them. I don't care what they say, and we are. And they've got signs out, 40% off flour, 50% off flour, and I'm like, man, I can't believe that it's dropped out that low. But that's a conversation for another day. Definitely.
It'll change. There's always going to be demand for this. It's a very unique plant, and I think that those of us that know, we know, and we're going to grow. And then we don't have to involve ourselves in that whole world. And that's part of the beauty, So
definitely.
Man, this has been great. If you've got more questions
about awesome.
Or anything along the way, I can't wait to hear you pop those up and get them out of the tub and see how it goes. And man, definitely. Worst case, if you have an issue after all of it, I'll be here.
Okay.
I'm stoked to see you.
Yeah. Me too. I appreciate all your advice, the support along the way. This is a learning experience for me, and I appreciate your guidance. I appreciate your time this morning. And with that being said, thank you for coming on the Organically Blunt Show, and you enjoy the rest of your morning. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Organically Blunt Show, a cannabis lifestyle podcast that's raw, uncut, and unedited. Thanks for listening to the show. We would like to give thanks to this episode's partners: Grow Strong Industries, the mother brand of Gorilla Grow Tint, Kind LED, and Lotus Nutrients. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Seedsman Seeds, a trusted seed bank with over 20 years in the industry. Use coupon code Organically Blunt 10. Horticulture Lighting Group, HLG, real efficiency, real yields, and made in the USA. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Rain Science Grow Bags, one-of-a-kind mesh grow bags that eliminate problems and increase yields. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Grove Bags, the best curing solution to save terps. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Captain Redbeard Seeds, genetics that are loyal to the soil. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Humboldt Seed Company, Humboldt's original seed. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Fishhead Farms, the maker of fish shit, the most robust beneficial bacteria on the market. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Sofim Genetics, quality genetics at a fair price. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Green Wolf Genetics. These genetics come from a wolf pack that runs with quality and no BS. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Utopic Essential Nutrients. Discover the truth. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. Stream Gardening. World-leading mycorrhizal fungi. Dry Tents, because we all need a place to dry that harvest. Use coupon code Organically Blunt. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And in the meantime, follow us on Instagram at Organically Blunt or on Social Club at Organically Blunt. You can reach us also via email at organicallyblunt@gmail.com. Organically Blunt can be found where you listen to podcasts such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, Anchor.fm, and Apple Podcasts. See you next time on the Organically Blunt Show.